In this video, we are going to look at solving and expressing solutions to inequalities. So inequalities have these kind of symbols here: less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, or not equal to. So, for example, r is greater than or equal to 2. That's how you'd read this. There's many infinite number of solutions to this. 3 is greater than 2, 2.3 is greater than 2, 7.5 is greater than 2. There's infinite numbers. 1,000,000 is greater than 2. So when we want to show the solution for this, we use a number line. Because it's or equal to, we want to include 2, because 2 is greater than or equal to 2. It's greater than or. So it is equal, so that fits that part of the or equal to. And so you'd put a solid dot at 2, and then you draw a ray going to the right that shows that all of the numbers that would be to the right of 2 and including 2 would be a solution to r is greater than or equal to 2. Any number within that line, that ray, will fit. So here's some general rules. If it's less than, you use an open circle and you would point to the left, as long as the x is on the left side here. If the variable is on the left side like this, then you can use this table to help you determine how to make your number line. All numbers less than or equal to, you would put a solid dot and go to the left. And you could also, that would be the same for no more than or at most. If it's x greater than, then you use an open circle. So you use open circles for less than and greater than, and solid for less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to. So greater than or equal to, you'd use a solid dot and an arrow to the right. So for the first part of the worksheet, you're going to look at a number line that's already been graphed and write the solution. So we know that we're going to have 1. We need a variable. So you can pick any variable you want. You can use n or x or p or q, or it doesn't matter. Trying to get my, oh, there it goes. X, I'll use x, and it's to the right, it's going this way, so that's greater than, and because it's a solid dot, it's greater than or equal to, and then you put the number. So x is greater than or equal to 1 would be this. I'm just going to fix that up a bit. There. And the same thing for 2, 3, and 4. You first put your variable, then you pick the correct inequality sign, and then you put the number that the point is at. In 5 through 8, it's very similar, except here is the solutions over here, how you would write them in words, not symbols, and then on the left is it written in symbols. So you have to match symbols to words. Make sure you're reading those correctly. So this table would help you with that part. And then there's a matching in symbols to the number line. So just be careful with that as well. All right, the next part I want to show you, because you have to graph your solution on a number line, I want to show you how to do that in Word. So sometimes we have a little bit more work to do before we can say what the solution is. If there's extra stuff going on with your variable, if it's not all by itself, then you're not ready to say what the solution is yet. So we solve these almost exactly the same way as if it's an equation. The only difference is if you have to multiply or divide by a negative number, and we'll look at that soon. So I have x minus 2 is less than or equal to 1, and I need to get the variable by itself. We prefer to have the variable on the left side with inequalities, and that's where it is, so that's good. So to undo the minus 2, I would add 2 to both sides. So I would get x is less than or equal, don't change that, less than or equal to 1 plus 2 is 3. So x is less than or equal to 3. Now we're ready to put it on the number line. Now if you're doing this by hand, if you printed this out, or if you're doing this on like a piece of paper, then you would just put a solid dot at 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, and then you would draw a line going to the left to show less than. I just put it above so it'd be a little bit easier to see. Now if you're doing this in Word, if you're working on the computer here, let me show you the tools. I erase this. I'm going to do the same thing, of course. I'm going to put a point at 3 and then draw a line to the left, but you have to use the tools in order to do that. Some of you, I've noticed, do have like a pen tool, so you can just go ahead and do what I did then. That's what I used. So I'm going to pick to insert a shape, and I'm going to insert I need a solid point. So I don't see a solid point here, so you can pick an oval or a circle and draw one here and choose to have it filled in. Now, how do you choose to have it filled in? Sorry, let me delete this too so it doesn't show up anymore. Okay, I'm going to do that again and show you how to fill it in. Shapes, circle. Now, when you draw a circle, it might show it filled in already, but if it doesn't, you need to format it so that it can be filled in. All of my tools are not showing up because I made this smaller for my video, but you can choose format usually right from that first row, and then you'll see there's you can fill it in. So I could choose a different color. I don't know why I would make it orange. I could just do black. You could do whatever color you want. Also, it's huge right now. So pick whatever color you want, make it the size you want. It does not need to be this big for a point. And then put it where it needs to go. Okay, so it needs to go on the number line at 3. So that's pretty good. And then I also need the arrow showing which way the solution would be. So I'm going to insert another shape. And I'm going to pick the ray tool. So here's where I would get the oval or the circle to fill in. Here's where I would get the one with the arrow at the end. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to go this way. Now you can put it right on the line, see how it's kind of hard to see? Mine's just slightly above it. I can also format that to make it maybe a different color so it's easier to show up. I can also make it thicker. That's under weight. And it should have an arrow at the end. That's a little hard to see as well. I think I can format that too to make it a better arrow. Like I could use one of these. In any case, we get the idea. There's an arrow, or there's a point, and there's an arrow pointing to the left. You don't have to worry about getting these perfect. Now, the good thing is that once you have done it once, you can copy and paste it for the next time. You'll have to change where it is, of course, and you'll have to maybe flip the arrow around so it's pointing in the other direction. Let's look at one that's greater than. Let's look at 15. I would subtract 11 from both sides, and I would get x is greater than 2. So I needed the point tool, so I'm just going to go back to this one and I'm going to select Control C on my keyboard and then Control V to paste it. Now it'll paste it somewhere strange that I don't want it. Here it is. I'm going to put it down here on x equals 2. See? And then I want the arrow, so I'm going to select it on my other problem, hit Control C and then Control V, and see the arrows pointing the wrong way. It's also really long, so I'm going to make it shorter, and I'm going to rotate it so that it's the other direction. There we go, and then I can put it here. Oh, also, this was not supposed to be, oh, I'm putting it in the wrong problem. It's supposed to be open circle, not a filled in circle. Move that over just a little bit. So I can select the point that I had used from before, and I can go to Format again, and I can just take away the fill. I can say no fill. Now it's this open circle, like it's supposed to be for this problem, and I'm putting it in for the right place now. Now it's an open circle at 2 and an arrow to the right. So it's kind of hard to get those originally, but once you have them, you can copy and paste them and modify them as you need to finish the problem. So next section is multiplying or dividing to solve. That's the same as you did for equations. In 17, this is x over 5. You might want to rewrite it as that. And then you would solve by multiplying both sides by 5. Now clearly you're not going to be able to graph x is greater than negative 50 on this graph. So just change these numbers to fit what you need. So we don't have to have from 0 to negative 20 on here. We could say that here's negative 50 right here. So it's fine with me. You don't have to get too worried about, changing them if you're typing with Word. Just say somewhere that this is negative 50 and then add your open circle and your line to the right. Okay, in the next section, this is where you have to be careful. This is the part where it's different than equations. If you multiply or divide both sides of an inequality by a negative number, you have to reverse the inequality symbol. So if it was greater than, it changes to a less than. And this is explained more in your textbook, but you can see how that holds true for numbers here. So if 8 is greater than 4 and you multiply both sides by a negative, now it's negative 16 and negative 8, and it's not true that negative 16 is greater than negative 8. It flips it from greater than to less than. So whenever you are solving and you have to multiply or divide by a negative number, then you need to change the direction of your inequality. So in 19 you'll have to multiply by a negative, so this would become x is less than or equal to whatever you get. And in 18 you'll divide by a negative, so you'll get x is less than, and then whatever you get when you divide by a negative. So all that will change is the direction of the inequality, and that's only when you multiply or divide by a negative number, not all the time. The rest of this worksheet is just solving more complicated inequalities. So the steps are all the same as for solving equations when you have to simplify or use the distributive property. There's several examples here. There's a two-step. There's one where you have to simplify by combining like terms on the left side. There's one where you need to use the distributive property and some exponents. So look back at those as you need. Let's do number 22. 22 says, and in these you don't have to graph, so you don't have to add a number line for these problems. Just the solution, which will include a variable and an inequality sign and then the number. Alright, so 4 minus x, and we need to first do the exponents part here, so that would be 36 is greater than or equal to 21. And you can combine the like terms here. You could write them next to each other if you want, 4 plus 36 minus x, but I'll just jump over that minus x. 4 plus 36 is 40, and then I have minus x is greater than or equal to 21. Now we subtract the 40 to get the x by itself, and we would have negative x because it's a minus x there. So it's not x, it's minus x, or negative x is greater than or equal to 21 minus 40 is negative 19. Now we're not done because it's negative x. If you want, you could add a 1 there. So if you add a 1 in front of the x, you can see that now you need to divide both sides by negative 1 to solve this. Negative 1 divided by 1 is 1. It cancels, so you're left with x like we want. But because I divided by a negative 1, I have to switch the greater than or equal to a less than or equal. And negative 19 divided by negative 1 is a positive 19. So if I were going to graph this, I would have a solid dot at 19 and an arrow going to the left. You don't have to show the number lines for these, but that's how you would. So this is the solution as well as the number line. If you want to add those, you can. So make sure you notice that if you divide by a negative, you have to switch the direction of the inequality. On these problems, there is, I think in all of them, maybe not number 26, in most of them there's a variable on both sides. I guess 26 is not the same. And so these are just going to be a little bit more complicated. You have two options when you have the variable on both sides with the inequality. You could collect all the variables on the left side, because then when we get our answer, we know how to graph this or how to read this more easily. If you collect your variables on the right side, which is a valid method of solving, that's fine. Then when you're done, you might have your variable on the right side. You will have your variable on the right side. 8 is greater than x is the same exact thing as x is less than 8. And you can think about that, or you could look at that. If you were going to put these on a number line, you would need to stop and think before graphing this on a number line, because you would not put a open circle at 8 and an arrow to the right just because it's a greater than sign. That would be incorrect, because 8 is greater than any number that you can pick for x. That's what it's saying. Well, 8 is greater than 7, 8 is greater than 6, 8 is greater than, negative 72. So I actually need the numbers over here. And if I had rewritten it with the variable on the left, or if I had started by collecting the variables on the left, then I would have gotten that without having to stop and think. All right, so that's how you are going to do this assignment. It should be mostly review, especially the first part, but I wanted to spend a little bit of time going over these. And remember, your rules for solving equations are going to hold true for these. That only exception is the multiplying or dividing by a negative number. All right, thanks a lot and have a wonderful day.